physics, enough to recharge or repair a conversion unit, but the drawings looked authentic enough. They seemed to be copies of ancient blueprints lettered in first-century English with Lingua Terra translations added and marked Top Secret and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Manhattan Engineering District. "And look at this!" Pickering opened at a marked page and showed it to him. "And this!" He opened where another slip of paper had been inserted. "Everything we want to know, practically." "I don't get this." He wasn't sick anymore, just bewildered. "I read some reviews of this thing. All the reviews panned hell out of it. World War II through a bedroom keyhole, Henty in black lace panties, that sort of thing." Yeah, sure," Pickering agreed, "but this Hernandez had illusions of being a great serious historical novelist, see? She won't try to write a book till she's put in years of research. Actually, about 6 months' research by a herd of librarians and college juniors and other such literary coolies, and she boasts that she never yet has been caught in an error of historical background detail. Well, this opus is about the old Manhattan Project. The heroine is a sort of super Matahari, who is alternately and sometimes simultaneously in the pay of the Nazis, the Soviets, the Vatican, Chiang Kai-shek, the Japanese Emperor, and the Jewish international bankers, and she sleeps with everybody but Joe Stalin and Mao Tse-tung, and of course she's on every step of the A-bomb project. She even manages to stow away on the Enola Gay with the help of a general she spent 50 incandescent pages seducing. In order to tool up for this production job, La Hernandez did her researching just where Lorenzo Gomez probably did his, University of Montevideo Library. She even had access to the photostats of the old U.S. data that General Lanningham brought to South America after the debacle in the United States in A 114. Those end papers are part of the Lanningham stuff. As far as we've been able to check mathematically, everything is strictly authentic and practical. We'll have to run a few more tests on the chemical explosive charges. We don't have any data on the exact strength of the explosives they used then, and the tampers and detonating device will have to be tested a little. But in about half an hour, we ought to be able to start drawing plans for the case, and as soon as they're finished, we'll rush them to the shipyard foundries for casting. Von Schlichten handed the book back to Pickering and sighed deeply. "And I thought everybody here had gone off their rocker," he said. "We will erect, on the ruins of Keegark, a 100-foot statue of Señorita Hildegard Hernandez. How did you get onto this?" Pickering pointed to a young man with dull brick-colored hair who was punching out some kind of problem on a small computing machine. "Piet van Reenen, over there. He has a girlfriend whose taste runs to this sort of literary bubblegum. She told him it was all in a book she just read and showed him. We descended in force on the bookshop and grabbed every copy in stock. We are now running a sort of gaseous diffusion process to separate the nuclear physics from the pornography. I must say, Hildegard has her biological data very well in hand, too." "I'll bet she'd have fun writing a novel about these geeks," von Schlichten said. "Well, how soon do you think you can have a bomb ready for us?" "Casting the cases is going to slow us down the most," Pickering said. "But even with that, we ought to have one ready in 3 days, at the most. By 2 weeks, we'll be turning them out on an assembly line." "I hope we don't need more than one. But you'd better produce at least half a dozen, and have some practice bombs made up, out of concrete or anything, as long as they're the right weight and airfoil and have some way of releasing smoke. Get them done as soon as you have your case designed. We want to be able to make a couple of practice drops." There was no use, he thought, of raising hopes which might prove premature. He told Paula Quinton, of course, and Themistocles M'zangwe, and by telecast on sealed beam King Kakkad and Air Commander Hargreaves. Beyond that, there was nothing to do but wait, and hope that Hargreaves could keep Orgzild's bombers away from Gongonk Island and Kakkad's town, and that Hildegard Hernandez had been playing fair with her public. He visited the city, where a few pockets of die-hard resistance were being liquidated, and where everybody who had not been too deeply and publicly involved in the Znidsudibit conspiracy was now coming forward and claiming to have been a lifelong friend of the Terrans and the Company. Von Schlichten returned to Gongonk Island, debating with himself whether to declare a general amnesty or to set up a dozen guillotines in the city and run them around the clock for a week. There were cogent arguments for and against either procedure. By 2100, the last organized resistance had been wiped out, and curfew had been imposed, and peace of a sort restored. There was still the threat from Keegark, but it was looking less ominous now than it had the evening before. Von Schlichten and Paula were having dinner in the Broadway room, confident that there was nothing left to do that they could do anything about, when the extension phone that had been plugged in at their table rang. "Colonel Quinton here," Paula identified herself into it, and listened for a moment. "There has? When? Well, where did it come from? I see. And the direction? Anything else?" Apparently there was nothing else. She hung up and turned to von Schlichten. "The Sky Spy just detected a ship lifting out from Keegark, presumed one of the Boer-class fighters, either the Jan Smuts or the Paul Kruger. It was first picked up on contragravity at about 100 feet, rising vertically from near the palace. The supposition is the geeks had her camouflaged since the time Commander Prinsloo first bombarded Keegark with the Aldebaran. That was about 20 minutes ago. At last report, she's 50 miles north of Keegark, headed up the Hoork River." Von Schlichten started thinking aloud. That could be a feint, to draw our ships north after her, and leave the approach to Konkrook or Kankad's open, but that would be presuming that they know about the Sky Spy, and I doubt that, though not enough to take chances on. They know we have ground and ship radar, and they may think they can slip down the Konk Valley either undetected or mistaken for one of our ships from North Uller. He picked up the phone. "Get me through on telecast to Air Commander Hargreaves, aboard the Procyon," he said. "I'll take it in the office. I'll be up directly." He rose. "Finish your dinner and have the rest of mine sent up," he told Paula. Leaving the elevator, he rushed into the big headquarters room just as contact was established with the Procyon on station over the northwestern corner of Takkad Sea, between Kankad's Town and Keegark. The Aldebaran, he knew, was west of Keegark. The Northern Lights, now fitted with a pair of 155mm guns, in addition to her 90s, had just arrived at Kankad's. He had the Aldebaran sent north along the crest of the mountain range, between the Hoork and Konk River valleys, where she could cover both with her own radar and other detection devices and exchange information with the Sky Spy, and the Gaucho sent in what looked like the right course to intercept the Boer-class raider from Keegark. The Northern Lights, also with screens turned to Sky Spy, was sent to take over the Aldebaran's regular station. Finally, he called Skilk and had the Northern Star sent south, down the Hoork Valley. After that, there was nothing to do but wait, and watch the screens. Paula Quinton put in an appearance shortly after he had finished calling Skilk, pushing a cocktail wagon on which their interrupted dinners had been placed. They finished eating and drank coffee and smoked. Most of the rest of his staff, who were not busy on the bomb project or at the shipyards or at the occupation of Konkrook, drifted in. They all sat and stared from one to another of the screens, which told, in radar patterns and direct vision and telescopic vision and heat and radiation detection, the story of what was going on to the northeast of them. Keegark was dark on the vision screen. Evidently, King Orgzild had invented the blackout, too. Not that it did him any good. The radar screen showed the city clearly, and it was just as clear on the radiation and heat screens. The Keegarkan ship was completely blacked out, but the radiations from her engines and the distinctive radiation pattern of her contragravity field showed clearly, and there was a speck that marked her position on the radar screen. The same position was marked with a pinpoint of light on the vision screen. Some device on the Sky Spy, synchronized with the detectors, kept it focused there. The company ships and contragravity vehicles all were carrying topside lights, visible only from above, which flashed alternate red and blue to identify them. Time crawled slowly around the clock face on the wall, the 65-second minutes of Uller dragging like hours. The spots that marked the enemy ship and our hunters crawled, too. Seen from the 150-mile altitude of the Sky Spy, even the 600-mile speed of the Gaucho was barely visible. They drank coffee till the stuff revolted them. They smoked until their throats and mouths were dry. They watched the screens until they thought that they would see them in their dreams forever. Then the Gaucho reported radar contact with the Keegarkan ship, which had begun to turn in a hairpin-shaped course and was coming south down the Konk Valley. After that, the Gaucho began reporting directly, and her topside identification light went out. "Doused our lights, we're down in the valley, altitude about 1,000 feet. We're trying to get a glimpse of her against the sky," a voice came in. "We're cutting in our forward TV pickup." The voice repeated several times the wavelength, and somebody got an auxiliary screen tuned in. There was nothing visible on it but the darkness of the valley, the star-jeweled sky, and the loom of the East Konk Mountains. "We still can't see her, but we ought to, any moment. Radar shows her well above the mountains. Ah, there she is. She just obscured Beta Hydrae 5. She's moving toward that big constellation to the east of it, the one they call Finnegan's Goat. Now she'll be right in the center of the screen. We're going straight for her. We're going to try to slow her down till the Aldebaran can get here." The enemy ship was vaguely visible now, becoming clearer in the starlight. She was a Boer class freighter, all right. Probably the Jan Smuts, the Paul Kruger had last been reported at Bwork, and there was little chance that she had slipped into